channel. Today I'm in a bit of a different filming location. Figured I'd try it out. I'm just sitting in front of one of my bookshelves right now. I just really love being surrounded by books, so I figured if I'm going to talk about books, I might as well have them as a nice backdrop. So this is going to be my May reading wrap up, and I'm really excited. I didn't read as much this month, but I have a few good ones in here and a few that I was kind of disappointed by, but anyways, we'll start off with a good one. Sorry if my height keeps moving up, it's because I'm slouching, but anyways, the first book I want to talk about today is Writers and Lovers by Leigh King. I loved this book so much. It was just brilliantly written and just really like my favorite type of book. I'm really into just contemporary literature that, you know, kind of explores life and identity and relationship dynamics and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, you could just tell that this was written by somebody who loves writing. I mean, obviously it follows. The main character is a writer who's working on her manuscript. And yeah, it was just such a great read, and I think that if you liked normal people, you will definitely love this. So I would say 10 out of 10, or on Goodreads, I definitely gave it a 5 out of 5 because yeah, it was just so good, and I'm so happy that I read it. I would recommend it to anyone. But alright, and I have them all on my floor here, so I'm kind of just picking which ones I want to do. The first book that I read this month was actually Forster's Room with a View. Or is it Forster? Forster's Room with a View. I believe that this was actually made into a movie in the 80s, and like it won Oscars, or the actors in it won Oscars, but yeah, honestly, I don't remember what I rated this book, maybe a 3 or a 4 on Goodreads, because I feel like it was fine. Like the first half was super boring, like I contemplated not finishing it, and I feel like this was one of the reasons why I didn't read as many books this month, because it took me forever to get through this. Even though it's not even like a long book, it was just so boring in the first half. But the second half I feel like picked up like a little bit. Obviously like it's never gonna be like super intense or anything, but I feel like the second half was more fun, which is why I think I was a little more lenient on my rating of it. I think I actually did give it a 4, but I would give it a 3.5. Yeah, it wasn't bad. I think a lot of people who like the kind of like, I don't even know what I would classify this as, like sort of like old school romance, you would like this. It wasn't really my cup of tea, but it wasn't bad. So, I don't know. I would recommend this, but only to like certain people. I don't think it's one that could be like widely enjoyed, you know? Anyways, technically the last book I read this month was Bird by Lamott, and this is basically just like, well, the cover says some instructions on writing and life, and it's like pretty much all about writing. I don't know how much life advice there was in it, but I enjoyed this. I feel like it was really nice to kind of read and, you know, get me in the mood to continue my own writing and things, and I feel like there were some helpful tips. I think I ended up giving it a 4 on Goodreads. But yeah, cause some of it was helpful. I mean, other stuff I think was maybe a little bit self-explanatory, but I definitely enjoyed reading this. So yeah, I would recommend it to anyone who is planning on being a writer, is a writer, wants to, you know, dip their toe into writing, I don't know. But yeah, anybody who likes writing, I feel like you would be able to get something out of this. The next book that I read was probably my most disappointing one of the month, and that was Elatsoe by Darcie Littlebadger, and I was so sad that I didn't like this book. I really wanted to like it because the premise is so cool, but I just think that the execution was just way off in my opinion. I think Mara from Books Like Whoa had recommended this, and she had described it as kind of like a Scooby-Doo sort of like YA novel, and I was like, wow, that like sounds like perfect. That's totally my vibe. But I think I had several like relatively big issues with this book. But I'll get to that in a second. Basically, the plot of this book is there's this girl, Elatsoe, who her cousin tragically dies in what they think is a car accident. And I feel like this isn't spoilers because this all gets fleshed out like right at the beginning of the book. But and because she can see ghosts, like her cousin comes back as a ghost and like says that he was murdered. So then it's the rest of the book is like her trying to basically solve his murder. And I feel like that's such a cool premise, and it's also like it's written by an Indigenous author, and Elatsoe herself is Indigenous. So I feel like there's a lot of cool elements from that aspect in it, which is why I was like, this novel sounds so badass. But I think, well, my main issue was that I just feel like this was conceptualized all wrong. Like, it's marketed as a YA because Elatsoe is supposed to be like 17 in it, which is a whole nother thing. But this really just reads way more like a middle grade, especially in the dialogue. I think that was a big issue for me, was the dialogue just sounded so juvenile and like not realistic at all. And don't get me wrong, like mad respect for the writer for even just writing this, but and like I know that dialogue is one of the hardest things to do in writing. Like it's so hard to like not have it be cheesy, and I feel like this just missed the mark with that. Like the dialogue was just really cheesy. And yeah, and even the adult characters like did not sound like adults. I don't know, this just, the way that it was written just really made it feel like a kid's story, which like I'm down to read like children's lit and whatever, or like middle grade, but I think when you go into the expectation of something like being a YA, then I don't know, it just really like did not work with me. And I think one of the reasons why this was maybe classified as YA is because the main character, Elatsoe, is supposed to be 17. And I think this ties in with the dialogue thing, but it just like seemed so unrealistic that she was 17. Like the way that she was talking and like her actions and whatever made her seem more like she was 12 or like a lot younger. Like 10 to 12, I could see like that kind of age range, and I think if they had made her that age and like marketed the book in that way, it would have been so much better. But yeah, it just seemed really unrealistic for a 17-year-old to be like talking and like acting these ways, and like I don't know. So I feel like there were just a lot of issues with this book that held me back from enjoying it, which is really too bad because like I said before, like the premise was so cool and it did have a lot of elements that could have been great if it had been done differently. But and I'm pretty sure that this is the author's first novel, so it could just be like a first novel thing, you know, trying to work out whatever. But I just think the idea was so good, and I was so sad that it like didn't really pan out, you know, in the way that I wanted it to. And I was kind of looking on Goodreads to see like if other people had thought this way too, and it seemed like other people agreed with me that the character just seemed like way younger than she actually was. But yeah, so I don't know. I was really sad because I really wanted to love this, but it just really did not work for me. I think I ended up giving it 2 stars. I would maybe give it 2.5. I don't know, because there were like some redeeming qualities in this. I don't know. Maybe not. The writing was just really cheesy too. Like I just couldn't get behind it, which makes me really sad because I really wanted to love this book. But yeah, oh, and I feel like this was also the other reason why I didn't read as many books this month, because again, it took me forever to get through it because I was like, I really don't want to read this, but I feel like I owe it to myself to finish it, because like, what if it got better towards the end? And honestly, it didn't. It was just, yeah, it just did not work for me. So the last book that I read this month was so good. I'm so excited to talk about it. And it's Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. And I was not expecting to like this as much as I did. This novel was really cool, and this was the first Leigh Bardugo novel that I've read. I know that she has a ton of other fantasy ones. And this one, I feel like people were like giving really mixed reviews on this. Like, I remember on BookTube or whatever seeing everybody loving this, but then I went on Goodreads and not a lot of people liked it, so I don't know. But I think it's because they had read Leigh Bardugo's other books, and from what it sounds like, I haven't read them, but they just seem very different from this, so maybe people just didn't like it because it was different. But anyways, this, I don't want to explain too much about this because I feel like this is one of those books where it's kind of better to go into it not knowing what it's about, but it's sort of like a fantasy, like urban magic novel, maybe. It's set at like a fantasy version of Yale, sort of, where they have like these magic societies that do these really cool and crazy things, and there's all this like drama and murder, like, so there's that like aspect of like you're trying to solve the murder, but then there's also all these like fantasy elements in it too, which was so cool. And this, even though it's a pretty big novel, like, I think I read this in like 2 or 3 sittings. I just really wanted to know what happened because it was just so cool. And I feel like this is the kind of fantasy that I really like, that it's like, it's still fantasy, but it's set in like some version of our world. So it's not like super high fantasy with like a ton of world building or anything, which I feel like is also cool, but is not really, you know, what I tend to gravitate towards all the time. But yeah, so this I feel like was a great reintroduction to like moderate fantasy, I thought. But my only issue with this was that, and maybe people were just saying this and they didn't know, or I don't know, but anyways, I feel like when I heard about this book, I remember hearing that it was like a standalone novel, which like for this author was rare because she normally like worked with series and stuff. So I was like, oh, perfect, like I only have to read one. But at the end, like there were so many things they didn't wrap up, and like they made it seem like the last couple lines basically said that there was gonna be another one, which I was like, what? Like, my mind is blown. Yeah, because I was like, because there was like, and there was just one character that I was like, I really don't want to know what happened to you. But because it was very, very ambiguous, and they still left it really ambiguous at the end. So I think there's going to be another one of these, but which I'm excited for. But now I have to wait, like, who knows how long, like, because I Googled, and like hasn't really been a whole lot of chatter about a second book. So I don't know, maybe it's just in the works or whatnot, but I'm really disappointed that I have to wait so long to find out like what happens to this one character, and yeah, and just like the other, you know, adventures of Alex Stern, who is the main character. Yeah, I did love this, but at the same time, I'm sad that it's not a standalone novel, but I'm also glad because I would enjoy reading more like of this like series and this character. But yeah, I feel like just when you go into it with that expectation that everything is going to be wrapped up and like done, and then it's not, it's just like so frustrating, especially when it's 450 freaking pages. But yeah, so we'll see. I'm a little bit interested to read more of her work, but I don't know, because don't know if I'm into the like hugely fantasy ones, which I feel like it sounds like her other novels are like that, so I don't know, but I'm waiting on Ninth House 2, Leigh Bardugo, if anyone cared. Anyways, thanks so much for listening to me talking about books. There wasn't a whole lot this month, but maybe June will be different, who knows. I actually just started reading, is it Take a Hint, Danny Brown? Yeah, Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert, and I'm maybe like a quarter of the way through or something like that. And it's already really good, so we're starting off June on a high note. So anyways, thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you back here soon, and might end up doing a bookshelf tour at some point, so stay tuned for that. Anyways.